representing Malaysia is like the highest level that you can do. And I always want to do my very best. And so when I didn't get the results that I wanted, I felt like a failure. We have so much responsibility to the nation. I've gotten people who said like, I'm too old, too injured, too big, too like everything that you wouldn't say to a person face to face. I've got it. I felt not qualifying before, and that was like heartbreaking. People say when you can feel your heart break, that's how I felt, because it was so devastating to me to not be able to go to Rio. I had always identified as, Farah Ann the gymnast, and that's what people always knew me as. And then now I'm just Farah. And I was like, who is this person without gymnastics?
It's another exciting episode of the Syok Podcast Live Confessions. Another guest joins us. I am very excited because I've been looking forward to interviewing this person who needs no introduction. And she is Malaysian Olympian Farah Ann. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm glad, and I also like your shoes first. I'm going to say that right now. I'm going to need to find out where you got them from.
They're the Nike Air Max. I can hit you up.
Okay.
Both of them.
All right. I'm going to mark that down now. Get shoes. Okay. So let's start with we know you so well. People think they know you well. I think that's one of the things that comes with the territory of being such a public figure such as yourself, right? But let's start with, who is Farah Ann? Like, if you had to describe yourself, like, how would you describe yourself?
Wow, coming out, guns blazing.
Yeah, I thought that was a nice way to ease it in, but no, right?
Is it easy?
Okay, what's your favorite Malaysian food? Can I start with?
Okay, I'll answer your question.
Okay.
Who is Farah Ann? So I think everyone knows me as, Farah Ann the gymnast. And that was how I perceived myself for many, many years. Since I was 3 when I started gymnastics until I retired. And so now I'm actually trying to find who I am. I'm multiple of things. Trying in gymnastics, it will always be my heart, it will always be my love. But I'm dabbling in other things. So I'm a daughter, I am an athlete, I am going to be probably an actress, I'm going to probably have a business, an entrepreneur, I'm a motivational speaker, I'm a mental health advocate. What else do I do?
You just gave me so many more questions to ask you.
And I'm also a certified judge now, so I can judge for gymnastics.
Oh, that's
and yeah, I'm actually, so all those things.
So to recap on what you just said, right? Let's go one by one. You said soon to be actress, I believe.
I have things in the works. Can't really talk about it right now.
Right.
What
can you say?
It's just a very small, a dabble, like a little pinch.
Okay, how about genre-wise?
Sometimes you have to resign.
Okay, so nothing, got it. We're back to the nice shoes. Okay.
Yeah, we're back to but yeah.
How about business? You said you're gonna be heading in business ventures?
A friend of mine, we are planning on potentially opening our own academy for gymnastics and also kind of athleisure.
Right.
I think.
Yeah, very popular now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So things like that.
And you also said that now you are able to judge.
Yes, I officially have a certificate to be able to judge you.
Oh, me? That will be an easy one.
Yes.
Just don't write anything. And that would be the judgment 0.
Oh, no, I think I'll give 100.
I accept it. This is saved and we are going to take that snippet and use it for my Instagram. Okay.
So, I have a judging license from the Federation of Gymnastics. That means I can actually judge. Now I judge in Malaysia for gymnastics competitions, but now I can actually do it internationally.
How does that transition feel like from being the person who was being judged to now being a judge?
It was very interesting for me because I think in the beginning I used to judge when I was training as well. So I would do minor competitions in Malaysia, and then now transitioning to the bigger competitions. It's interesting to sit on the other side. It's also quite nerve-wracking because I've always wanted to be fair, and as a judge, whenever I talk about competitions, everyone is stressed. The athlete is stressed, the judge is stressed, everyone is stressed to make sure that everything goes well. So it's just very interesting to be on the other side. It's a lot more studying that I needed to do because every time a competition comes, I have to re-study the code of points and make sure that everything is up to date.
You just brought up how like it was such a stressful thing surrounding everything relating to tournaments, gymnastics, right? Can you share with us some of those challenges that you faced during the early training years? You started at 3 years old, though, right? You
Yes.
said 3 years old.
Yeah.
Right. Can you share with us what that was like?
So I think in the beginning of my career, it was more for fun. And if you talk to my parents or anyone who knows me, I was very, very competitive. So for me, it was more of like going out there. And when you're new, everything is very exciting. So you just go in there, you compete, and you hope for the best. And then I was like, oh, I wanted to win these medals. But as I grew older, there was a lot more stress put on me because I started representing Malaysia at 10 years old. Okay. So that was my first international competition. But at that time, it was like, oh, it's so interesting. I'm competing with other people now, other countries. So you see like Singapore, you see Thailand, Indonesia. And then when I started doing better and well, and especially after I won my SEA Games, my first silver was in 2011. Right. And then there wasn't a SEA Games in 2013, and then there was one in 2015. Right. And I won 6 medals, 2 of them gold. Wow. And then a lot more pressure was put on to me because people expected high-level performance at all the competitions that I went. And so I put a lot of pressure on myself because for me, representing Malaysia is like the highest level that you can do. And I always want to do my very best. And so when I didn't get the results that I wanted, I felt like a failure. Like I felt that I was letting all these people down who have been there for me, like my coaches, my teammates, my family, friends, and even like the Malaysian public, because I'm representing Malaysia out there. I'm not representing myself. Right. So for me, that was what part of the stress was always putting that much pressure on myself to just be the best all the time. But through that, I've learned that failure is such an important tool for me, because I learned that I'm a lot stronger than I thought I was. So if you had told me when I was 17 or 18 that I would have qualified for the Olympics at 27 years old, I would be like, I think you're crazy. Because that seems like, because all my seniors when I was that age kind of retired around like 22, 23. So to be at that age and to be at, I would say, the best, the fittest I had ever been, like the best level that I had ever been, it was such a very big like learning curve as well.
When you think about it now, because you achieved so much at a very young age. Yeah. Right? And how long has it been since you retired now?
3 years? Right. I retired in 2022, so 3 years. Yeah.
Does it feel like you've retired? Like,
no, every time people ask me like when I retired, I'm like, what year is it? Okay, that like subtract 2022, yeah, so 3 years. It doesn't feel like it's been 3 years, but it also does feel like it's been 3 years. Right. Like body wise, like fitness wise. I think it's a major like, okay, I'm not an Olympic athlete anymore.
Where you can eat nasi lemak anytime you want.
Yes.
But nobody would be able to tell, because looking at you, you look like you'd be able to take to the floor again like, at any point.
Any point.
Yeah.
I am very happy to say that I'm happy that you feel that way. My body doesn't feel that way. I can no longer do like double saltos, but I probably could do like a single salto. So that's all I have to say on that matter.
And okay, when it comes to talking about the challenges that you faced, right? Physical versus mental, which one was the harder part?
I think in the beginning of my career, it was physical because it was learning new skills, which was very fun for me. It was learning new skills, getting the basic down. And then later on, it was more mental because I think when I turned like 18, 19, I started getting hesitation problems. And it was something that I never had when I was younger, because I used to be, I'll just, like kind of like close my eyes and jump feeling, where I'll just like do any skill that the coach threw at me. And then when I started having my hesitation problems, it was a big problem for me because I wouldn't be able to do certain skills that had been done for like 15 years. And then I had to scale back and then redo the skills, go back to zero and then build. And so that for me was very stressful and I felt very demotivated because it was just being in the sport for this long and for the skills to be such basic skills that I had hesitation problems. It's not, when I talk about it, people don't really understand. It's like like mental blocks. I think that's a better way of saying it. It's like big mental blocks. And it's not because I was scared. It was not because I was injured. It was just like these blocks that I had in my head. And I think only sports like gymnastics or diving will have, where you actually have to flip in the air. Will have, for example, a bit like Simone Biles when she had her mental block. So it's similar to that. And also just training myself to be able to cope with the immense of pressure. So I think that was more mental. So throughout the later stages of my career, I focused a lot on more mental training because I had already honed down all of my physical skills. And then it became a balancing act of, that's why I say every time we got there, it's always like, I would say like 70% physical and 20% mental, and then 10% of like.
How do you deal with it though? Like it sounds like it was really something that weighed down on you. So how did you overcome it? Was it with help talking to someone, or
it was a lot of things. I'm very grateful to have wonderful like coaches and teammates because they knew what I needed, certain like keywords. So I tried everything that I could try. So visualization, mental training, going to see psychologists, and then coaches helping support. So I've tried everything under the sun, and it some days worked, some days didn't work. So it was always just like, okay, today it worked, and some days I would be like, oh, I don't have it today, and it would be a fantastic day. And so because it's only certain skills, so every time I needed to work on those skills, I would have to have like my coach by my side and to just be like a safety guard in case I like fly off the apparatus. But yeah, it was just a very balancing act. So it was just every day I would go in and just do my training programs, and some days it'll be fantastic, some days not, and just kind of deal with it and try to navigate through it.
So it sounds like you had people around you who were able to support you, and you felt comfortable with talking to them about these issues.
Yeah, of course, because they could physically see it. It was something that was physical, right? Like I would run to do a skill, and I would like either stop or like I would tumble, and I wouldn't do the specific skill, which is very dangerous. So, and I would also, I have wonderful teammates, so I would talk to them. I'm like, hey, today, I don't know, I don't feel like, I think it's the mental block is there, could you help me? And they would always help. They were like, what do you need? Do you need us to, say specific words? Do you need us? So, and it was very different every time. So some days I'll be like, okay, try not to say anything so that I will see like what works. And my coaches as well. So I had a very, very strong support system that really helped me. And also, I started reading a lot of books on how other top tier athletes deal with like their mental health. And of course, it's very, very different, right? So if you have, I read something about like an archer, and so how they would sit for an hour just like visualizing. And so it's very, very different specific keywords. And so I just kind of adapted them into how I train for gymnastics.
Do you feel that enough is being done, generally speaking, for athletes to deal with these mental challenges that they're facing? Or were you uniquely fortunate enough to have people around you? Or is this something that most athletes would have, that kind of support?
I think I was very lucky. I think Institute Sukan Negara, we actually have psychologists. But when I was training for the Olympics, I actually had extra help that came in. It's also very difficult because there are a lot of issues. For example, I had a very, very good psychologist, but she was helping me more with the pressure of performing at the highest level. And then, so the one that dealt with gymnastics specifically, like the mental box, I needed to kind of have like a lot of cooperation to say like, oh, this is working and this is not working, because it's always like a give and take, right? So one day this would work, one day this didn't work. But I think that now there's more emphasis put on like mental training, and I think it's people realize that for like top athletes, that's actually a very, very important part of being like the top 5% in the world. So a lot of people, especially top tier athletes, really hone into that the mental capabilities. And I think that I was very lucky to access all that information and to be able to use it. And I think that obviously more can be done, but we are stepping in the right direction.
I also think definitely you speaking about it now is so helpful. For people to hear you say that this is what you went through, right? I think it's so helpful for everyone to know that this person who went through so much, do you feel sometimes people see you as being perfect?
I think people don't realize how hard it is. Because being an athlete and also being just always in the public eye. And I am very grateful that Malaysia has a lot of support for athletes. And I think that also makes us feel like we have so much responsibility to the nation. Because our programs are obviously like the Malaysian government pays a lot for our programs. So like when we go for international competitions, of course there are some that it's a very give and take.
Right.
So obviously we cannot go for everything. And if you want to, and you do, the better that you do, the more
events that you'll be
events you
going
go
for.
to.
Yeah.
So I've experienced everything in the spectrum. So I've been like to the Olympic Games where obviously there's a lot of funding, and then to like minor games where there wasn't funding. There was a point where we paid to go for our own world championships because so it's a very give and take. But because of all of that, there's a lot of pressure that's placed on us to be perfect. And if we're not, people will let us know.
Yeah.
And so I've gotten everything. I've gotten a lot of support. I've gotten people who said like I'm too old, too injured, too big, like everything that you wouldn't say to a person face to face. I've gotten, but I've also gotten a lot of support. So it's always navigating through those two things and having all that on your shoulders, right? And to do that, I've always been very like grateful and thankful.
Yeah.
But I've just learned to sometimes we need to like distance ourselves and just go in there and do our jobs and just do the best that we can.
Yeah. And to talk about it.
Yeah, and
like
talk
people
about
need to hear this. Yeah.
That's why whenever I tell people that, they always ask me, so you train once a week? I'm like, no. It's like a 6 to 7 p.m. job, right? At Monday to Saturdays.
Yeah.
I'm like, we don't get like sometimes we don't get Hari Raya off. We don't get holidays.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a very hard job.
People need to hear this. Absolutely. You mentioned representing Malaysia at the Olympics. So everyone knows this, of course.
Yeah.
Now, when you qualified for the 2020 Tokyo Olympics, right? It was what many of us would consider from the outside looking in a significant milestone.
Yes, it was.
Right?
Yes.
How did it feel?
Yeah. So the journey to get there was a very, very long journey. I would say about 8 years in the making. So every time I tell a story, I always have to start with Rio because actually I have to start in the 2011. So 2011 was the first time I not qualified. So I went for my first World Championships. I was alone, me and just one of my coaches, and that was quite terrifying, I must say, because World Championships is like no other competition because everyone in the world is there, and it's chaotic. There's like 500 gymnasts, and it was the first time I went for such a large competition, and so I didn't do very well because it was just like very eye-opening to me, and also with the structure of everything. And then I actually, because I didn't do very well, I actually called out my sister and I said, I'm done gymnastics.
Oh.
Yeah, I was like...
It could have ended there.
Yeah, it could have ended there.
Wow.
And she was like, are you feeling this way because you didn't do well or because you want to retire? Then I'm like, I trained so hard and I failed. So what's the point, right? You feel like you're at the end of your rope. And then she's like, kind of calm down and just come back. So I was like, okay. Then went for SEA Games, did very well, and then didn't qualify to Rio. That was heartbreaking for me because I was only 0.1 off. And then going for Tokyo, and so it was at World Championships in Stuttgart. The night before, I've always been nervous, but when people say they have elephants in their stomach, I had like elephants, not butterflies, like elephants. I was so nervous because I felt not qualifying before, and that was like heartbreaking. Not even heartbreaking, like people say when you can feel your heart break, that's how I felt. And I'll tear up now because it was so devastating to me to not be able to go to Rio. And then
0.1 you said.
0.1, and it was my fault, right? So I didn't do the best that I could do it, and that's why I always tell people, if you do 110%, if you've done everything, then you won't feel guilty, or you wouldn't feel that you failed, because you do the best that you can do, and whatever the results, that will be the results. But I knew I didn't do my best, and that was so devastating to me. And then, so for the Stuttgart 2019, I remember feeling like I wanted to cry. Like I had all these emotions in my head, and so I just put on like a sad movie, and I cried, and it was it was very nice to have like my teammates. So all of us is very interesting. We all like supported each other, but we all were doing our own things that night. So we weren't talking to each other because we were all trying to process through this huge milestone that we would have to compete tomorrow, and one of us would be able to qualify because it's like an individual sport.
Okay.
But the morning of it, I felt very calm. And I remember just saying like a prayer, saying, just give me the strength to the best that I can do, to be the best of my capabilities, and just to do what I've trained for, and just to have a good day. And I remember because it was in the bus, it was like drizzling. And I got, at the competition, and my leotard, my flag actually ripped.
Oh.
And then my coach, oh my God. So, but my coach, Mr. Tata, she always has like a needle and thread. She always like prepared, right? So she has pins, needle and thread, everything in her bag because we go through this. So she's sewing up like my flag on my leotard. And we go out there and I did a really good competition. My last event was a bit shaky, but then came on and like I was one of the first few groups competing. And so the whole day I had to wait to figure out if I qualified. And that night, like the schedule came out. And then my older sister, she actually texted me because she was like, you know, refreshing that page.
Checking.
My parents at home, my mom, when my mom tells me this story, she's so nervous because they didn't show us live. So she could only see the scores. And so she was just so nervous. And when I finally got it, I just texted my family group and I like, Tokyo, here we go. Yeah, and I had to step out of my room because my teammates were like happy for me, but also it's like sad for them. So I like have been in, you know, like both spots. So I like removed myself from the room and I actually went to like my coach's room because she was staying in a different room, and like we just like hugged and cried. And I just, you know, that was really like a moment where I'm like, oh, I finally did it. You know, I was really like, yeah. So it was really, really like a happy moment for me. And obviously we had a pandemic, but I at that moment, years and years of training has gotten me here, and I can finally like, you know, it's the ice cream, the dessert of my career. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Like even now when you tell it, it's like we can feel it, like we're there, like we're there with you. And a big part of it was that making that comparison with Rio and then Tokyo.
So I've had like my heart shattered, and then like, so it's the one thing about being an athlete, right, is you go through so many emotions, like the lowest of low and the highest of highs. So it's just very, it's a wonderful thing being an athlete, but also like, you have to go through
a lot. As you have expressed so eloquently already. And after having gone through all of that, since you were 3 years old, you retired.
Yeah.
Right? So retirement is often seen by many as the end of an athlete's career, but it could be the beginning of something else as well.
Yes.
How has it been for you?
It was quite devastating for me to have to retire because I knew in my heart that it was the right move, but it took a lot to get there. Like in the gym, I was feeling very demotivated. I was feeling very upset, and so like my coach, she was like, I cannot tell you what to do. It's like you need to make this decision. And so I had to talk to a lot of people, like my family, my sisters, like my friends. So there was a lot of people that I kind of went for advice. So people who had already retired. So I was like talking to my teammate like Tracy. She had retired like the year before. And so I asked her how, you know, so I was like hoping that other person could make this decision for me, you know, because then they would like lift like this weight off my shoulders. But I knew I had to make this decision by myself. So I asked my older sister, who also went through the same thing. She was a national athlete, and then she also retired. And then she's like, where's your pros and cons list? You know, like have this list. And I think the point of me retiring was I came into the gym and I wasn't enjoying it anymore. And I was kind of very emotional. And I just told myself, you know, I don't have to be here anymore. And I knew at that point it was like, I need to like go. So I think I needed to get to that point because I would have never left if I was still happy in the gym. And it's not like I didn't enjoy training. I think it was just like I was already kind of done everything I wanted to do. I've always knew that I wanted to retire after the Olympics. And so I had already put a plan in motion, but it was just kind of trying to like squeeze that last bit of, you know, maybe. But I think it was the right decision for me.
Right.
And I was at the height of my career, and I think I was just at the right moment to do it for me. And I was very lucky to be able to do it for me. Because I think a lot of athletes, sometimes they don't get to choose their path, where they either have to retire because they're injured, or like there's other factors. But I was very lucky to be able to make the decision by myself, and not because I was injured and not because I couldn't cope with training. It was just my wholeheartedly decision to leave. But saying that, it was a very hard time for me because I had always identified as, Farah and the gymnast, and that's what people always knew me as. And then now I'm just Farah. And I was like, who is this person? Who is this person without gymnastics? And it was very hard for me, as that sometimes, for example, even Michael Phelps went through depression. A lot of very big athletes go through a period of time because you give everything of yourself. Like, it's an identity that was like merged together. And then now it's like half of me is like gone.
Yeah. Because it's interesting that you say that, because so many people who are in the public eye, such as yourself, become known for one thing.
Yeah.
For being that one thing. But you are so much more than that one thing.
Yeah.
Does it sometimes feel that because people see you as the one thing, do you start seeing yourself just as being that Olympian only as well? Like, do you have to remind yourself, I'm not just this one aspect of my personality, of my life?
It's funny because sometimes I'd be like, oh, I'm not that person anymore, so I'm not important. I don't know. It's like sometimes I feel like that, and my friends is like, you are Farah Ann, like, you are Farah Ann, like, they sometimes like, you can do anything that you want, whatever you put your mind to. I think for me, what was hard was people always assumed that I would jump into something straight away, and I needed like a mourning process, like to mourn that version of me and to find something new. So basically, like, like you have to chisel yourself down so that you can build yourself back up. And so it took me a while, but I think now I'm venturing. That's why people ask me, what you do now? I'm doing all these things because I've never been able to do all these other things. I've never been able to be like Farah Ann, maybe like maybe in broadcasting, or Farah Ann in business. Other things that don't revolve around sport. Sport will always be my number one. Will always be where my heart is. But it's time to find something else. And I've been very lucky to be able to find that version of myself.
Wow.
Yeah.
Speaking of the multiple facets of Farah Ann, as someone who minored in gender studies,
yes, I
you
did.
minored in gender studies.
Yeah.
How do you think societal expectations of women, both like in and outside of sports, shaped your journey? Like, did it factor in?
Yeah.
And do you ever feel like you needed to push back against what people expect?
Yes. So it's very interesting because I did international studies and gender. I think being in sports, I believe when I was very young that because gymnastics is such a beautiful sport that you have to be very strong but also very like artistic. So it's a blend, I would say, of both very feminine and masculine characteristics.
Right.
And I've been very lucky to be surrounded by very strong women. And even when I was in school, I would always challenge the boys in like running competitions, or if the teacher would be like, oh, our boys pick up the chair, I'd be like, why? Like, I can do it too.
Yeah.
And in sports, I realized actually kind of the divide a bit when I was a bit older. It was more from like the media side, where it would always be like, oh, look at like her outfit or her hair or her makeup. And it would be like, oh, the top 5 like prettiest athletes.
Right.
And I was like, okay, and so that's kind of the divide, and where people would always be, instead of looking at their achievements or being strong or what kind of the sport itself, it became more like a beauty contest, as like a female athlete.
Yeah.
And as you know, we're very lucky in Malaysia that we are paid the same. Like, it doesn't matter if you're female or male athlete, everything is very similar, but overseas it's not. So I think those are divides where people feel that sports is still very male dominated, and whenever like a female comes along, it's always kind of like in passing, And for me, that's why every time I talk about like gender, or I always talk about like women empowerment, is because I think it's such an important thing that we need to talk about, because sports is an arena that everyone is there because they want to be the best at their sport. And it doesn't matter if they're female or male, they're there to, be the top 1%, the best athlete that they can be, hone their skills, be strong, be all these characteristics. So it's a very neutral space, and that's why I love like sports, because it doesn't matter if I'm female or male. Like if I'm the best, I'm the best.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so I think being in that background and then also understanding the multiple dynamics of being a woman in sports, but also having my degree was very interesting to understand why people act the way they do, and all the multi-level dynamics that are actually happening in our society that makes women feel that way, or why certain people view female as kind of the lesser gender sometimes, and kids especially, sometimes parents will be like, oh, they need to like study, or it's not very womanly.
Yes, you see it
Right?
all the time.
So I think it's very important for me to be that role model, to be saying that like, if I can do it, then you can do it too.
Right. To advocate for people who don't feel empowered enough.
Yeah.
And for a person like you to do it, it makes it feel more real, because it's strange how, like you mentioned, right? Like people are there to compete as athletes.
Yeah.
And yet they put this most beautiful list, best looking list.
Yeah.
And sometimes the people who make that list are not like the main people who are representing the country even.
Yeah.
So
it's very interesting because and then there's also another facet to it. Then people will be like, oh, that person's too like manly. And it's like, so then there's another dynamic of it, of like, you still want to be like feminine, but then because you do sport, then you're too manly, then people don't like it as well.
Right.
So they're very different dynamics to like sports, and it's also very interesting of like why certain sports wear certain outfits, and then we go into about like viewership. And for example, like you have like football, when they was like, oh, we don't pay our female athletes as much as the men because the viewership, and then they were proven very, very wrong with like the female World Cup.
Right.
And it's interesting, right? When you say World Cup, you always think about men. Why do females have the female World Cup? So these are very like interesting dynamics, because with gymnastics, it's not. It's just the World Cup.
Right.
It's the World Cup. It's not like a female World Cup. It's just the
we
World
say
Cup.
it's about performance all the time.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's judged based on looks, while the performance becomes secondary sometimes. It's not just how good you are at the sport, it turns into how good looking you are.
And I think media plays a big role as well.
Right.
Because with commentators, when you talk about an athlete, like they say, oh, she's wearing that, or she's very pretty. So the words that we use especially are also very interesting, and also play a role in making people's viewership. Because when you say things that you point out, so people actually like change their perception.
Yeah. And the more you hear the same thing.
Yeah, then it goes on like that.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
What changes do you think, or developments would you like to see in Malaysian gymnastics and the broader sports community in the coming years, based on everything that you've just said, actually, right, that you've already highlighted? Yeah.
I think for me, it's always just growing the community. I believe that gymnastics is such a wonderful sport. When you can do it as a professional, as not, and for kids, it's such a wonderful sport because it builds your strength, it builds your flexibility, teamwork. There's so many facets to gymnastics that you can actually use it to go on to maybe like different sports, or even just being a healthier version of yourself.
Right.
And I think just like building up more of the community, and to have a safe community. I think now in sports, obviously there are a lot of highlights about how sometimes sports are unsafe.
Right.
And I think it's just to have a good like community, a safe community for kids to thrive in, for gymnasts to thrive in, and obviously to make more world-class athletes, but also for people to see how fun sports is, and how it can be incorporated into their lives.
Right. And it's been highlighted by some medical journals, in fact, that many elite athletes, such as yourself, depending on the sport that they engage in, because of the rigorous training that many athletes, such as yourself, go through, sometimes you do so much beyond what is a regular human is supposed to go through, that then your body can start to suffer later on in life, right? You can start feeling the pains.
Yes.
Do you feel something needs to be done to find that balance between the extremes and finding a safe way to do this? Or is it just up to an individual because they have chosen that path?
Okay, so this is one of the things that I always say, where sports is good for you, but elite sports is not. by like the many, many injuries that I've had throughout the years.
Yeah.
I think it's also finding a balance, but in order to be the best, you do have to go through multiple of injuries.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that's the nature of elite sports.
Right.
But in saying that, there has been a lot of progression in sports science, in medicine. For example, if you had an ACL, MCL injury 10, 15 years ago, it was like the end of your career. Now people have like 2 and are still the best in their field. And it's also training based on your capabilities. And what I'm saying is that like different people train well in different ways.
Right.
For example, I have a teammate who builds muscles really fast. So her training program is very different from mine. Or some people have skills that they are better at like learning. So there's a lot of things that we can do to make sure that the athletes are safe and also not putting them in a position of harm. While saying that if you have an injury, sometimes it is important to take a step back.
Right.
Or if they have to go out and compete, making sure that there are the right doctors, the right physios that are taking care of them. Because I used to go to physio every single day. I used to do recovery every day. And it's very important for coaches and athletes to understand the physicality of it, to understand the science of it, to be... Nutrition plays such an important role that I think sometimes is lacking. If you go like overseas, there are some teams that there is a chef on hand that cooks them every single meal for each body to make sure that all of their hormones are balanced, they get everything that they need. So it's actually, it can be down to a very specific science that I think that it's very important for us as athletes to also be more aware of, but also people taking care of us. Because obviously when I started very young, so I was like 15, competing for Malaysia at 10, like what would I know, right? So it's also like a community of like parents also understanding how important nutrition is. Even now, like even if when I'm not an athlete, like nutrition plays such an important role. And for me, even now, it's like understanding which exercises work best. Obviously, I'm not going to train 6 hours a day anymore, right? So don't try to.
You've earned the right to not do that. Actually, right? Definitely. You know, it goes without saying that you have a lot to be proud of when it comes to your achievements in the sports arena, right? What are you most proud of? If you took sports aside, what are you most proud of? Yeah.
I think if I took sports aside, it's actually just having... Okay, so I can always categorize it as, having a wonderful like family, and to have that support system. I'm also very proud of the person that I am, not in sports. So it's very hard to say because a lot of the values that I've learned is through sports, but I think that the values that I have and what I want in life is very...
it's a lot to think about, right? It's a lot to think about.
Answer this.
It doesn't even have to be the perfect... There's no right or wrong answer. It's just what right now at this moment. It could change later on. But at this moment, what comes to mind?
Just having... I'm very proud of just being surrounded by like people that I trust and the values that I have in life. I think are something that I'm proud of.
Right. And these values exist outside of sports as well, right?
Like, sports have has helped me build it, but I think that that's really saying a lot about my upbringing and like having my family around me and like very good friends, and like all the people around me have taught me both sides, right? So bad people have taught me what strengthen myself, but the good people have been there to support me.
It's like almost like constantly having to remind people that you're a whole person. You're a whole person. You're not just the athlete. You're a whole person. What advice would you give to parents who want to support their child in pursuing competitive sports while ensuring they maintain a healthy relationship with it as well? You've mentioned a little bit about it already, making sure that training is done right, nutrition is important.
So my parents, they never forced me to do gymnastics.
Oh, right.
Yes, I started very young, so obviously they were there to send me to training sessions, but they were never there to be, you have to do sports, you have to go for it. They never forced it upon me. So it was really much my decision to be able to choose the sport for me.
Right.
it took a lot of effort for them because they needed to send me every day for trainings. So it is the job of like parents to support their children because they won't be able to do it by themselves. So it's your job is to be there to be a supporting, a guiding hand. So that's my advice to parents.
Right.
Like be there for your children because they will go through a lot. When they're injured, when they're down, when you don't win, or when they win, it's very important for you to be there for them. To
And
be
for you, it was
present.
always your choice, is that?
Yes.
Is that what you're saying? Which is not the case for this, which is not what everyone goes through, right? So you were fortunate.
I was very fortunate to have parents who loved sports and they wanted to see their children succeed. So I think that was a very good point that allowed me to choose. But I think also for parents is that it's a sacrifice you need to make to be able to be there for your children.
Sounds like you really appreciate your parents a lot.
Because I wouldn't be here without like my family.
Do they know? Do they know how much you appreciate them?
Yes, I think so. I've told them many times. I hope they know. So they've been there. That was the one thing with Tokyo that I was a bit sad about, is because they couldn't be there, and it was my last competition. Yeah, so I had planned out a whole thing of like, getting business class tickets for them, to fly there, like stay in a nice hotel. For me, it was just a way to say like thank you, because they try always to go for all my competitions, especially international ones, and especially if me and my sister were competing, because it does take a lot of money.
Yeah.
To fly for this competition, to buy the tickets. And so they had already bought the tickets. Everything was kind of done.
Yeah.
And then the pandemic happened. So that was like my one regret, is not having my parents there.
Wow. That's the one thing you would change?
Yeah, that was one thing I would change. Because I think it's such a family affair. So even my sister, like I would have loved to have my whole family there. It's more of just like to experience it as a family.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, wow.
Because it's not just me.
It's like you were robbed of that.
Yeah, that's the only thing. I was like,
Yeah.
I wished.
But it doesn't take away how proud they are of you though, right?
Yeah.
And of your achievements.
I think so. I hope so.
I know so. Based on what you're telling me, I know so. And, speaking of appreciation, we appreciate you joining us. We've got rapid fire questions for you now, okay?
Awesome.
So you got the first thing that comes to mind is what you answer. Okay.
I'll try.
Ready, here we go. Hear it. Okay. The skill that gave you the most trouble.
Yuchenko twist.
Whoa. Okay. Google it.
Yes, go it.
If you could choreograph a routine to any song, what would it be?
I have the song in my head, but I don't know the name of it.
Okay. How does it go? You can sing it.
No, I have my phone.
Are we going to hear Farah Ann sing for the very first time?
No. I'll send you the track that you can overlay it on.
Okay. It is this song.
This song.
Insert song.
Insert title of song.
Farah Ann will remember and then she will send it to us.
Yes. So it's not really
Now.
fire, but yeah. The reason, me explaining my thing, because I was listening to this song and I was choreographing a routine in my head. I'll be like, this would be so good, cute for like a kid to do.
Yeah.
And then I had like a few moves that I thought would be cute. So yes.
Now we need to see this routine as well.
Because people don't understand how hard it is for us to choreograph. Like my coach, Miss Natalia, like she choreographs all my routines, and it takes her like months, because she looks at the person, she has to like see what they, kind of their vibe.
Right.
People use vibe differently, but I mean like their
Got it.
aura. I don't use vibe because I'm not that generation. I'm a bit older than that, but yeah. So it's like a whole thing, and then she will ask us our opinion, and then we do the move. So it takes a lot for us to get like routines.
Right. So this song would be perfect.
Yes,
Okay.
I feel like I could also probably perform to this song. But
All right.
This song.
This song.
They cut out all my explanation and then rapid fire, and then I build it together.
We would never do that to you, Farah Ann. We would never.
Yeah.
Now, if you could compete in any other Olympic sport, what would it be?
Ice skating.
Ice skating?
Yes.
And you've done it? Like, in your own time?
I've done it once or twice, and to the dismay of my mom, because my mom is Canadian.
Okay.
And so I like hockey and,
Ice.
ice.
Yes.
So I should be better, but I'm not. But
Okay.
I feel that because I love watching it.
Right.
I know that I'll be able to do it if I train. I think if I put the same amount of passion in ice skating and gymnastics, I'd be able to do both.
Who's an athlete, any sport that you'd love to train with for a day?
Nicole David.
Oh, I feel like that might have already happened.
It has already happened.
Okay, it's already
She's
happened.
so nice.
Right?
She invited me to play squash with her, and I won 1 point against her.
That's right.
And it's a pity point. She was like, no, it's not. I'm like, ma'am.
You
I'm
played
terrible.
squash with her.
I'm terrible at every other sport except for gymnastics. It is so funny when people like play sports with me when I'm terrible at it. They're like, yeah, I have one skill, which is gymnastics.
If you had to describe gymnastics in one word, what would it be?
Amazing.
Right. What's your go-to post-competition meal or snack?
It's funny because if you Google 2015, there is like literal like newspaper articles. So I've asked for like cake. I asked my family to bring a cake for me.
Cake. Is there a specific cake?
No, it just doesn't matter. I just want cake.
Just cake.
Cake and fried chicken.
Oh, together?
So it can be fried chicken and then cake.
You know what? This is a judgment-free zone. If you want to eat your fried chicken and your cake together,
We listen and we don't judge.
we listen. That is the trend. We shall. Yes, we're making it happen. We are that young. Well, you are. Okay. Final one. If you had like the opportunity to make one change as Prime Minister of Malaysia
Yeah.
for a day,
Okay, I have answer for this.
okay, what would it be and why?
I would make sure that there are ways for people to walk on the street.
Oh,
Oh my god, I have what is it?
pavements.
Thank you. No, but like walkways.
Alright.
Yes. Have
Not enough. Not
yeah.
enough. Right.
You need to be able to walk. So have like walkways for people to be able to walk and public transport.
Right.
Yes.
You heard it here.
Yes.
It's official now. More walkways.
The reason you start with the walkways because in order to be healthier, you need to walk more because a lot of people live sedentary lives. But you can't walk because there's nowhere to walk in Malaysia.
You're right.
Right? If there was a park, if you can walk next to a park, so the walkways will walk through the park. So then we build like parks, so then people can be healthier. And when people are healthier, they're happier. And so when you have happy people, people are healthier. And so like Malaysia is like top 5, or we have the highest ranked obesity rates in like the world. So that's the plan. See, science thought this through.
If you work for DBKL, you are going to get a letter. Or maybe a proposal from Farah Ann. I am not arguing with anything that you have to say because I agree completely. That's right. But we appreciate you again. Thank you so much for...
Me?
You're amazing. Vote for Farah Ann for the next elections. Yes. Thank you.